Let's talk about trees and what they have to do with learning, and in particular what they have to do with reading, and in particular, what they have to do with reading complicated information. Have you ever wondered, just found yourself wandering around the house wondering, why is it that words are divided into sentences and paragraphs? What's that all about? Why do we divide sentences up that? Why do we divide words up that way, You have a paragraph like this from the book How We Think by John Dewey, a book about thinking and learning that was written in 1910. It has some sort of antiquated to us phrasing here, just like you might see on a test. Why are they split up that way? Why do you have a long series of words and then a punctuation mark at the end? Why do we do it that way? Well, if you were in class with me, you might say something like, "You see, Mr. Smart, each one is an idea." Well, that's true if you look at that first sentence of that paragraph and read here. In its loosest sense, thinking signifies everything that, as we say, is in our heads or that goes through our minds. In other words, just generally speaking, a thought is anything that goes through your head. But do sentences have more than one idea in them? You go back to that paragraph, look at the second sentence. I have in three colors here for three different thoughts, basically. You could split them up this way and it makes a little more sense, and we'll get back into this later. But sentences can have more than one thought, and usually they do. And not only do sentences have more than one thought, a word can have more than one thought. It's called a morpheme. It's a unit of information that some words might have one idea, some words might have more than one idea. If I say the word cupcake, that's basically two ideas. It's made out of cake and it's in a cup. But if I just say the word cup, that has one idea, what it is. I say the word cup and you may see something like I have drawn there in your mind. It might be a glass, might be a coffee mug, might be a sippy cup, I don't know. The word cups, just one more letter, and that's two ideas. What it is, a cup, and roughly how many it is, or the fact that there's more than one. So, if you're listening to someone talk, are you listening for sentences? Are you listening for the period or the question mark at the end? What we're listening for is ideas coming at us, one after another. If we listen that way, then why not read that way? Now, this is all based on a field of study called generative linguistics, and that's not pasta, that's linguini. Linguistics is a big word that just generally means the study of language. So this is sort of the modern study of language, and one of the basic ideas behind it is that we are born with the ability to use language. It's not something that we have to learn, like, say, tying our shoes. Now, reading is, but not talking. Do you really teach a baby to talk? You can say to a baby all you want to, say mama, say mama, say mama. And the first word is going to wind up being dada. We're pre-wired for language. We can get better at it, but we're sort of born with the apparatus to do it. And one of the main ideas behind this is that sentences are structured a certain way, and those sentences reflect the way that thoughts are structured. A word or a symbol, that's just a code for a thought. The words ice cream cone, that's just a series of straight and curved lines that we take to represent that thing on the right. And for that matter, that thing on the right represents an actual ice cream cone. Communication works this way. I have an idea in my head that I want to get into your head. So I put it into a little code, like a sentence, and then I speak or write or gesture my code to you. And then you decode it, figure out what it means, and then that idea is in your head. If you text me something funny, I'm probably not going to text you back and say, "I think that's funny." What I'm probably going to do is send you one of those. And if it's real funny, 2 or 3 of them. 3 is about as high as I go. If I send you 4 of them, you can rest assured that I am in the floor, rolling around in the fetal position with tears streaming down my face. I'm so amused. So we send symbols back and forth to one another, and the thoughts have the same structure as a sentence does. So we kind of have this already. We're wired for it. But we don't think exactly in complete sentences. You have that that voice in your head all the time that's explaining the world to you, but it's not always in complete sentences. If we could read each other's minds, we probably wouldn't understand what we were reading. We probably wouldn't know any more than we do now. So we think in thoughts, and we listen in thoughts, that is, in phrases. A part of a sentence, a group of words in a sentence that basically covers an idea or serves a function, that's a phrase. So therefore, read that way. We have to pay attention to sentences because that's how ideas are grouped together. But it's easy to get lost in long sentences if we don't break it down. This is where trees come in, by the way. Not ordinary trees, but phrase trees. Now, phrase trees, that's a device that can be used to sort of graph off a sentence, such as this. This is a very, very simplistic one. It gets more complicated than this. But if you look at a sentence like, he, a silly boy, does not know squat. He, a silly boy, we can call a noun phrase or a subject phrase. That's the thing in the sentence that is doing something or being something. And then VP stands for verb phrase. That is what it's doing. The subject of the sentence, what the sentence is about, is he who is a silly boy. What about him? He does not know squat. Now, the point is not for you to draw brackets around everything. It's just a way to think about things. Different colors could do the same thing. You're sectioning off the sentence to make it easier to understand. Going back to that long paragraph from how we think. Looking at that first sentence again, it's not really one thought. It's closer to three thoughts. If we stack them, it's a little easier to see. In its loosest sense, that's a prepositional phrase. It's just an opening phrase. It just tells us, it kind of sets the stage for us. We're thinking generally here. Then the noun phrase is actually just one word here, thinking. That's what this sentence is about. It's about the act of thinking. So, what about thinking, generally speaking? It signifies everything that, as we say, is in our heads or goes through our minds. In other words, thinking in this way, generally defined, can just signify anything going through our heads. Look at the second sentence. If we stack it, the noun phrase, he who offers a penny for your thoughts, or the subject phrase, that's the subject. That's what the sentence is about. It's about the person who would offer you a penny for your thoughts. A penny for your thoughts, by the way, that's just them saying, what are you thinking about if you're lost in thought? So the person who says that to you sneaks up on you when you're daydreaming about whatever and says, penny for your thoughts. That's the subject of the sentence. What's that person doing? They do not expect, what do they not expect? To drive any great bargain. In other words, if somebody says to you a penny for your thoughts, they expect to get about a penny's worth. Kind of a dim view of humanity by Mr. John Dewey, but we'll go with it. That final sentence of that paragraph, that's a 30-word sentence. And by the way, Dewey's point in this is that there are different ways to define thinking. Very generally, we could say it's anything that goes through your mind. And he argues that no, the actual thinking is using evidence to arrive at a conclusion about something. This last sentence here, he says, more of our waking lives than we should care to admit, even to ourselves. So the subject of this sentence is this big chunk of our life, more than we really want to admit. What about that big chunk of our lives? It's likely to be whiled away. Well, whiled is a perfectly 1910 word that means wasted. We're doing it in this inconsequential trifling, just piddling, with idle fancy and unsubstantial hope. Just trivial thoughts, basically. So, the bottom line, make life easy on yourself. Break sentences down into manageable parts just as you listen for thoughts coming at you, ideas coming at you. Read that way. Break it down, and these sentences will be easier to understand. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and keep learning.